This was the video that was originally connected to the Speaking Stones video, and I ended up having to split it all as the stones took over 2 hours on its own. So I'm focusing on 3 main Mandela effects in this video, plus a few little ones in between. The bleeding trees and the appearance of the bread rolls on Da Vinci's Last Supper, which is the latest change, well, which was the latest change when I started doing this video, reported by Unimundi and Once Upon a Timeline. These are a little late because, well, by the time it took me to do the Speaking Stones video, which was like almost 3 months, and then I think I did a couple of videos in between, and also I'm a little pushed for time and energy these days. So let's recap briefly on the Last Supper painting. I already covered this in a recent video on art. Firstly, the chalice was replaced with various glasses on the table. This was also the original depiction before it was Mandela affected. According to many, glass did not exist in biblical times. I have even received comments from viewers saying that this information, which I spoke about in my art video, is wrong and that I am a complete idiot or moron, as the trolls like to say. Whatever, sticks and stones. Well, apparently this is also a Mandela effect. Now, man-made glass has indeed existed since well before Christ. Even in the KJV, a verse has been changed from "do not put new wine into old wineskins" to "do not put new wine into old wine bottles," which suggests that glass did indeed exist, therefore this is also an ME. Also, the fact that people remember old wineskins as opposed to old wine bottles is also an indication that there has been some kind of change as far as glass is concerned. Now, getting back to the Last Supper, the latest change is bread rolls that have appeared on the table. As we know, bread and wine represents the flesh and blood of Jesus Christ. No church will ever partake in any communal supper with leavened bread. In other words, bread rolls like those depicted in the Last Supper now. Some are saying that this is a reference to the wolf in sheep's clothing, as in the bread is not what it appears to be, or as it should be, like the wolf dwells with the lamb, and that it is a warning of evil in disguise, an imposter or fake. I personally believe differently. I think the fact that the wolf now dwells with the lamb is an indication of more harmonious times. So, as a non-believer in God or Satan, at least in the form that is widely portrayed, I would like to take a look at this from another angle. Let's take a look at the wolf and what it symbolizes to many. Oh, and by the way, for those trolls who believe my videos are a message from Satan, you are way off mark. In fact, you are so off, it is funny. And any comments referring to this or similar will not get through my settings, so just don't waste your time. Firstly, the wolf has been hugely misunderstood for years. Wolf is a symbol of guardianship, ritual, loyalty, and spirit. The wolf has the ability to make quick and firm emotional attachments and often need to trust their own instincts. Thus, they teach us to do the same, to trust our hearts and minds and have control over our own lives. This brings us back to what I keep saying in most of my videos. We have the power and control within ourselves and need to learn and trust those abilities and instincts. Among the various peoples and tribes of North America, the wolf represents not only creation, but also death and rebirth. In the Lakota language, the word for wolf, Sunk Manitou, means divine dog. The lessons the wolf teaches are not always easy to swallow, but nevertheless necessary. This can't be a bad thing. The wolf roams the wild with a thirst for freedom, working within a social environment. In modern culture, we associate wolves with negative qualities, such as the darkness that mythical werewolves represent. In Aesop's fables, for instance, they are portrayed as being evil and dangerous, such as in the story of The Boy Who Cried Wolf and The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. The Brothers Grimm story of the Little Red Riding Hood also portrays the wolf as ferocious and intimidating. But doesn't this thirst for freedom sound familiar? Within our ME community, we talk about waking up the sheep. Wolf in sheep's clothing, the wolf who seeks freedom but is shackled by the sheep. The wolf will appear once it has shed its sheep's clothing, thus being freed. Has anyone ever thought about it this way? In Egyptian mythology, the wolf Wep-Wawat was originally a war deity, his name meaning the opener of the ways. It's interesting to note here that the Native American Indians, a completely different race and culture of people, believed that wolves had a special connection to our paths in life as well. In Asia, the wolf is the guardian of the entrance to heavenly celestial realms. He's a guide that helps you to discover when you are being misguided when using your instincts. Equally, if the wolf presents itself in a moment in life where you feel stuck, it might be reminding you that you're a free, wild creature, that you can deviate from whatever path you are currently on and become a lone wolf if necessary in order to pursue your dreams. Maybe we've been looking at this all wrong. What if this is all about us recognizing who the real creator is? Maybe God is not who we thought he was all along, but that simply we are God, or God is within us, whatever way you want to look at it. We are the creator. We are the wolves in sheep's clothing. We're the ones we have been waiting for, and we are the ones who will free ourselves. One thing I learned in life is that there is never anyone who is going to come along and save you. Life teaches you to save yourself and to heal yourself. Something else was pointed out to me about the Last Supper painting. In the original Last Supper, there were tidbits of food and crumbs left on the plates. They were at the end of eating and it was conversation time, which was a very significant time for the Last Supper because they had a lot to discuss. Now, there is no indication of anyone having eaten anything at all. In the Bible, Jesus fed the multitude, also an ME by the way, it used to be multitudes, with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, signifying a miracle by feeding many people who would have otherwise starved. Let's take a closer look at the general symbology of bread. One interesting reference to bread that I found was in Carl Jung's Memories, Dreams, Reflections. What was the purpose of this wretched memorial service with the flat bread and the sour wine? Slowly I came to understand that this communion had been a fatal experience for me. It had proved hollow. More than that, it had proved to be a total loss. I knew that I would never again be able to participate in this ceremony. Why, that is not religion at all, I thought. It is an absence of God. The church is a place I should not go to. It is not life which is there, but death. Which is interesting because I have already stated that the wolf represents not only creation, but also death and rebirth. So what exactly does bread symbolize? Life-sustaining food, strengthening, nurturing substance. In addition, this symbol also relates to everyday life. Quote, "Give us this day our daily bread," unquote. According to Jung, the womb, in other words, creation. Bread comes from the harvesting of wheat, so when bread appears in dreams, it may indicate the completion of a certain cycle of life stage and the beginning of another. Bread is used in many cultures to highlight the relationship between the nourishment of the body and the nourishment of the soul. This relationship means that dreams of bread can often have a profoundly spiritual nature, but bread can symbolize procreation and therefore creativity and growth. We use the phrase bun in the oven for being pregnant. Bread in dreams asks us to consider what sustains and nurtures, what helps us grow, and to return our focus to that which is essential to our physical and spiritual well-being. And by the way, there are other Mandela effects connected to bread. Dave's awesome bread is now, wait for it, Dave's killer bread. I discovered this in YouTube by Life Matrix, posted on 29th of March of this year, which by the way is no longer viewable, at least not for me. It was viewable when I first started researching this months ago, but it seems that Life Matrix has deleted most of his videos. Trees can now be milked for water. This is now a thing, much to the surprise of many. There are a ton of survival videos here in YouTube describing how you can get clean, healthy, fresh water from a tree. As far as I know, this was only possible previously with birch trees, but now it is possible with more types of trees. In the video, the guy explains how you can tap into a tree for water using just a knife and a canteen to catch the water. Now, he says that this is a seasonal thing, but still, maple, birch, sycamore. This was not the case before. There are also reports of water just gushing out of trees due to heavy rainfall. In this video, water is gushing out of a Montenegrin mulberry tree, a rare natural phenomenon. So many rare things these days, amazing. This happens apparently after heavy rainfall in the village of Dinosa in Montenegro. Underground springs become flooded and the added pressure pumps water up the roots, which collects in the hollowed out trunk. According to locals, this has been happening for 20 to 25 years, maybe longer. The Kanata forest in India is full of these trees. The water is also believed to possess many medicinal properties. From Wikipedia, it says Terminalia tomentosa has a remarkable attribute. Some members of the species store water in the dry season. A survey conducted at Bandipur National Park, India, showed that a proportion of trees store water and there is a girth-dependent increase in the frequency and amount of water storage. The mechanism and ecophysiological significance of this water storage is not known. This pin oak tree, or also known as the swamp Spanish oak, was dying and had to be cut down. As they cut into it, it started spouting water. In this article at outdoorlife.com, they talk about being able to sugar from different types of trees. Quote, sap from sugar maple trees has the highest sugar percentage. Other maples and different tree species only have about half as much sugar. Sycamore trees, birches and hickories can also be tapped for drinking water that can be boiled for syrup. Black birch sap is particularly delicious. Walnuts can be tapped for drinking water too. And then came the bleeding trees. The most notorious tree for producing this sap is the dragon's blood tree, which can be found in northern Africa. Known around its native Africa as Kiat, Mukwa and Minunga, this is a kind of teak tree with an even more common name, the bloodwood tree. Cutting off one of its branches results in the same kind of effect you might find if you chopped off a person's limb. When damaged, the tree releases a deep crimson sap that looks alarmingly like human blood. In fact, its sole purpose is to coagulate and seal wounds, much like our own blood does. Today, the red sap is commonly used for treating medical conditions like malaria, ringworm, and sharp pains. So it is interesting that this also has medicinal properties. So here we have something that started out with only one type of tree, then suddenly they were everywhere. India, China, North America, even according to the skimpy wiki page, these trees are native to Southern and Southeast Asia. What's more, there is that mysterious thing with the dates of the articles again. I've touched on this a couple of times in my videos. How many, if not all, articles are dated since 2012. Even the references on the wiki pages are all from 2017. None are earlier. So the bleeding trees in Revelation, which by the way used to be Revelations. There's the S thing again. Yeah, my last video I covered these S's that were there and are not there anymore and vice versa. I don't know what they want with the S's, what the problem is. So this all got me thinking about blood and water. It seems there are many distinct connections between much that is being Mandela affected. Logos made flesh. Of course, in this context, they are referring to the Greek meaning of word and its connection to the Bible, and in particular John 1:14, where John says, "And the word became flesh." But I just found it apt because there are so many logos that have been Mandela affected. Anyway, there is this whole article on water and blood. The powers of the Spirit of God proved him God. The sufferings proved there was the flesh of man. This reminded me a little of what I read quite often in the Mandela Effect groups. The discussion about whether we are alive or dead. Did something happen to our old reality? Were we shifted over as a consciousness? Are we living in some kind of afterlife, etc.? Is this all a message to us, telling us that we are all divine and human in one body, and that we are all one? Even Jesus said, "You are the same as me. These things I do, you will do, and even more." In Genesis, the Word was the beginning of energy into matter. Transformation of vibrational energy stepped down into matter. Again, I refer to my sound and resonance video. It is all connected. This actually supports what I said in my Speaking Stones video, that we are all capable of great power. Perhaps this is once again a reminder for all of us that we should be harnessing it for better use. Getting back to the trees, I decided to look further into the symbolism of trees. Without trees to give us our oxygen and all the other many varied things they supply us with, we would not be here. They are directly connected to water. They take in the water from above and below. Water is their blood. They can and do live for many generations, body incarnate, and they do have a distinct spirit or energy which releases after the body dies. They give birth to the next generation, both before and after death. The correlation to humanity is astounding. Let's take a look at the Kabbalah Tree of Life. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, as the Kabbalah Tree of Life is quite complex. I will, however, as usual, leave the links below, as always, so that you can check them out for yourselves. The Kabbalah Tree of Life is a diagram used in various mystical traditions. It usually consists of 10 nodes, symbolizing different archetypes, and 22 lines connecting the nodes. The nodes are also associated to deities, angels, celestial bodies, values, single colors or combinations of them, and specific numbers. It is usually referred to as the Kabbalistic tree of life in order to distinguish it from other concepts with the same name. The diagram is believed to be derivable from the flower of life, which is also interesting as I cover this in great detail in my Speaking Stones video. And again, I say that there was a reason that these topics were all interconnected. Scholars believe that the concept of a tree of life with different spheres representing encompassing aspects of reality traces its origins back to Assyria in the 9th century BC. The Assyrians also assigned values and specific numbers to their deities similar to those used by the later Jewish Kabbalah. The beginnings of the Jewish Kabbalah are traced back by scholars to the medieval age, originating in the Book of Bahir and the Book of Zohar. However, the first historical instance of the modern diagram appeared centuries later in the Latin translation of Gates of Light in the year 1516. The version used by modern Jewish Kabbalists first appeared in the print edition of Pardes Rimonim in 1591. According to Chassidist Kabbalist scholars, the tree of life is to be interpreted in the following way. Kabbalists believe the tree of life to be a diagrammatic representation of the process by which the universe came into being. To Kabbalists, it symbolizes that point beyond which our comprehension of the origins of being can't go. It is considered to be an infinite nothingness out of which the first thing, usually understood among Kabbalists to be something approximating energy, exploded to create a universe of multiple things. This reminds me of dark matter, which we all know is something that they are trying desperately to understand more. After the energy of creation has condensed into matter, it is thought to reverse its course back up the tree until it is once again united with its true nature, Keta. Thus, the Kabbalist seeks to know himself and the universe as an expression of God, and to make the journey of return by means of the stages charted by the spheres, until he has come to the realization he sought. The Lord God commanded the man, saying, "From any tree of the garden you may eat freely, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat from it you will surely die." Genesis 2:16 to 17, ESV. Here's a thought. Perhaps this is a warning that we are killing ourselves with knowledge. Many believe this is how Atlantis was destroyed. Are we still children playing with matches? And perhaps the day we learn how to harness this knowledge correctly, which we, by the way, all have access to, is the day we truly ascend. And then we have DNA manipulation. Yet again, something I covered in my sound and resonance video. Trees from ancient times have always had a symbolic meaning, irrespective of whichever culture's point of view you look at. There are numerous mythic qualities symbolized by trees, besides common metaphors like the tree of life, which gives us an idea of the symbolic significance of trees. The Vedic school of thought believed that trees were the primary form of living beings. On the other hand, in Christianity, the Christmas tree is symbolic of several things. According to Christian tradition, Jesus Christ is depicted as a carpenter, and the ultimate sacrifice which he made is symbolized by the wooden cross. From time immemorial, trees have had a symbolic significance in literature too. Several great writers used trees to depict their various ideas. Many writers used tree symbolism to signify the concept of good versus evil, and the most important symbolic significance of trees was the tree of knowledge, according to Christian mythology. The oak tree symbolizes courage and strength. It is believed to be the most powerful of trees. In ancient times, the Romans conceived that oak trees were responsible for attracting lightning. So they associated it with Jupiter, the sky god, and Juno, the goddess of marriage and the wife of Jupiter. So this tree is symbolic of fulfillment and conjugal fidelity. Socrates believed that the oak tree had divine powers and considered it to be authoritative. Pre-Christian priests of the Celts are believed to have eaten acorns while preparing to preach. Moreover, they also believed that its leaves had healing properties. The Christmas tree holds a special significance in our lives. We all decorate Christmas trees while we celebrate the birth of Christ. But what does this symbolize? It symbolizes the Garden of Eden and the Tree of Life. As per Christian tradition, the Christmas tree is related to St. Boniface, as it is said that he cut down the Thor tree so as to prove to the local tribes that he disapproved of Norse gods. Today, Christmas trees are decorated with lights, lamps, garlands, ornaments, etc., and an angel or a star is placed at the top. The star represents the Star of Bethlehem, while the angels signify the angel who told the shepherds about the birth of Jesus. The olive tree has a long history of symbolism, and there are a number of representations which an olive tree is linked to. It acts as a symbol for reward, victory, strength, purification, fruitfulness, and peace. In Greek mythology, the tree was considered sacred, and it was believed that the tree was formed from the quarrel between Athene, the Greek goddess of wisdom, and Poseidon, the god of sea and earthquake. As per Christian and Jewish tradition, the olive tree was symbolic of peace. Old fables say that the cross on which Jesus Christ was crucified was made from an olive branch. New awakenings and rebirth are symbolized by a cherry tree. There's the rebirth again. Cherry trees are today grown in several countries where they were traditionally not grown, as they are of high value not only as a food plant, but as an ornamental plant as well. Cherries bloom in bunches, and so in ancient Japan, a cherry symbolized clouds. Moreover, it was also used metaphorically to show that life of a person is short. The short-lived nature of cherries and their extreme beauty are often associated with mortality. In addition to that, the blooming of cherries is considered a sign of good fortune and is also a symbol of love and affection. Cherries were used as motivation for the Japanese people during the Second World War to stir up militarism and nationalism. It is said that Japanese pilots took branches of cherry trees with them during their missions. Thus, tree symbolism has played a significant role to mean a variety of things from ages. The most common example is the evergreen pine or fir tree, which is used by most of us, especially during Christmas. And let's not forget the Tree of Souls from the movie Avatar. The Tree of Souls, besides being a connection to Ewa, also works as a way for her to directly interact with the world through the seeds of the tree. The tree has the capability to connect directly to the human nervous system, despite humans lacking a cue. The roots of the Tree of Souls are capable of initiating a neural link with the Navi, like with the Tree of Voices. This allows all of the Navi to unite as one. To find the secret meaning of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you need to first study how certain parts of a tree function. Furthermore, you need to investigate how certain features of the brain and spine relate to a tree. The tree is an important symbol in many spiritual and religious teachings, because it represents the connection between the spiritual realm and material world. Besides studying the tree, brain and spine, you have to overcome your fear of the occult, so you have enough courage to tumble down the rabbit hole to explore the world of occult knowledge. To find one of the secret meanings of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you need to use occult knowledge and the art of word magic to decipher the parables and riddles in the book of Genesis. Many people like to associate the word occult with evil. This is a huge misconception that prevents people from learning important spiritual knowledge. The word occult comes from the Latin word occultus, meaning hidden, concealed, secret. Therefore, occult knowledge means hidden knowledge or secret knowledge. Occult knowledge is like a tool and therefore can be used for good or evil purposes. Today, many religious people like to verbally attack researchers of the occult, but what they do not understand is that the Bible, the Quran, or the Tipitaka contains more occult knowledge than over 99% of the books in the world. All words have magical properties because they were created based on occult knowledge. To be more specific, they were designed based on sacred geometry and sacred sound. Many of them were charged with magic intention. What the education system does not tell you about letters is that they are actually sigils containing the fundamental semantic code for transmission of thought. This is why words, which are made up of letters, are so effective for stimulating the human mind and transmitting information. Certain advertising companies are well aware that words are very effective tools for stimulating the mind, which is why their ad campaigns often have a lot of words in them. Besides having the power to stimulate the mind, words also have the power to cut and shape the material world. Besides shaping the material world, words have the power to create the world of matter. Throughout the history of man, the tree has always been a symbol of worship. One of the reasons for this is because the tree is a great expression of the one and the many. As the one, the tree starts as a seed with infinite potential. This seed contains the Atman, a word that comes from the Sanskrit word Atma, meaning essence, breath, soul. In Hinduism, the word Atman means the principle of life. As the one, or the seed, grows, it eventually transforms into a trunk and then sprouts branches and leaves, becoming more increasingly complex. By observing and studying how a tree grows, you can see how it beautifully and miraculously expresses the principle of unity and multiplicity. This principle of unity and multiplicity can also be seen during the development of a fetus. The creation of the fetus starts with the merging of two seeds, the sperm and the egg. This merging process transforms the sperm and egg into a zygote, which is considered one seed or one being. An interesting fact that you need to know about the word one is that it is an anagram for the word neo, a word-forming element meaning new, recent. Another interesting piece of information is that the word Neo is the name of the main character of the movie The Matrix. In the movie, Neo eventually became known as the One. The zygote, or one, or Neo, is only a seed, but within it contains all the information of the body of man, male and female. Do not forget that the Matrix has also been Mandela affected and a topic that frequently pops up in the Mandela effect community. As the zygote grows and divides itself, it eventually develops into the blastocyst and then the embryo. This is the stage when all the different parts of the body develop, such as the spine, heart, brains, lungs, and central nervous system. An important structure of the body is the skull. This is the dome of the temple that houses an organ called the brain, which is located between the temples of the head. This organ has two hemispheres called the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. Many scientists and spiritual teachers have said that the left hemisphere is the masculine side of the brain and is responsible for logic, analytical thought, science, and math. As for the right hemisphere, it is the feminine side and is responsible for art, creativity, holistic thought, imagination, and spiritual awareness. The thoughts produced by the mind and processed by the brain have the power to motivate man, male and female, to do good or evil things. This concept is metaphorically represented in the book of Genesis as the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Anatomically, this tree represents the left and right hemispheres of the brain. To see the connection between the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the left and right hemispheres of the brain, let's explore another important tree in the midst of the garden, called the Tree of Life. To find the secret meaning of the Tree of Life, you need to study the arbor vitae, which is an important part of the brain located near the brain stem. The arbor vitae is defined as a tree-like appearance in the vertical section of the cerebellum due to the arrangement of the white and grey nerve tissues. The connection between the arbor vitae of the brain and the Tree of Life is plainly obvious when you know that the Latin term arbor vitae literally means tree of life. The book of Genesis was not written to be read literally. The fact that a serpent spoke to Eve in the book of Genesis should tell you that this book contains myths. This is why the book of Genesis does not make sense until its myths are deciphered. Dictionary.com defines the word myth using these exact words: a traditional or legendary story, usually concerning some being or hero or event, with or without a determinable basis of fact or a natural explanation, especially one that is concerned with deities or demigods and explains some practice, rite, or phenomenon of nature. This definition does a good job of briefly summarizing most of the stories of the Bible. An important principle that you need to know about myths is that they are often written in parables and riddles. The reason for this is that to attain higher spiritual knowledge, you need to learn how to decipher words to find their deeper meaning. For example, the knowledge of God cannot be understood through words alone, because words cannot express the power of knowing. Because of this, the stories of the Bible were written in parables and riddles to motivate people to use their spiritual powers to help them decipher the words into information, assimilate the information into knowledge, and experience it into wisdom, allowing them to know what the words mean on a spiritual level. Maybe this is why in Matthew 13:34-35, Jesus said, "I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world." In certain occult teachings, the serpent is a symbol of life. This is also in my Speaking Stones video. Procreation, wisdom, transformation, fertility, and healing. The serpent also represents the cycle of life, death and rebirth, as the wolf. Based on knowledge and research, it is believed that the serpent in the book of Genesis represents the ego, the producer of thoughts related to curiosity, rebellion, and disobedience. These characteristics of the ego are not necessarily bad things. For example, children are very curious, rebellious, and disobedient, but do we judge them as bad or evil? The serpent represents the ego mind that curiously wants to explore beyond the Garden of Eden. When you look at the serpent and Adam and Eve from the perspective of the mind, The serpent is the ego, and Adam is the conscious mind, and Eve is the subconscious mind. This concept is related to the Holy Trinity, which is defined as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit existing as one God. The ego is etymologically defined as the self that which feels, acts, or thinks. The word ego comes from the Latin word ego, meaning I. In other words, the ego is your individuality. The name Adam is defined by etymonline.com using these exact words. Quote, biblical name of the first man, progenitor of the human race, from Hebrew Adam, man, literally the one formed from the ground. Hebrew Adamah, ground. To find the occult, secret, hidden, remember, meaning of Adam, you need to use the art of homophone to help you find a specific word that sounds similar to Adam. Phonetically, the name Adam sounds nearly identical to the word atom. The biblical character Adam represents the positive atom, ion, and the biblical character Eve represents the negative atom, or ion. The book of Genesis uses myths to secretly tell you about the splitting of the atoms and the creation of genes and DNA, hence the title Genesis, which is genes is, genes isis. At the deepest level, the biblical story of Adam and Eve is nothing more than a story of the two creative forces of polarity and why those two forces are constantly fighting and making love with each other, similar to what people do in an intimate relationship. This process of fighting, or expanding, and making love, contracting, allows the manifestation of negative and positive experiences. The knowledge and experience gained from these experiences teach the two creative forces of polarity to achieve a state of balance and harmony. The people who wrote the Bible were geniuses and knew about atoms and DNA over 2,000 years ago. Maybe scientists should start paying attention to the secret messages hidden in the Bible. The Bible is not really a record of history. It is a mythical book that teaches people important lessons in life and the secrets of the universe through the power of myth. Because of this, to access the secret knowledge of the Bible requires occult knowledge and the ability to decipher and assimilate mythical information into knowledge using the art of word magic. While we're on the subject of trees, check out this latest phenomenon. This happened not long ago. Again, there is this weird reporting thing going on. Firstly, where are all the major newspapers? Why aren't they reporting this? And all the articles, again, are just a copy of each other. The Independent is there, but to be honest, that is not one of the most reliable sources. This is a major event, peeps. 14 million friggin' trees just wiped out. Where are the tabloids? Why is nobody reporting this? What the F? Angelo Borelli, head of the Civil Protection Agency, said Veneto had seen winds of up to 180 kilometers per hour and that the situation there was apocalyptic. Something similar happened in Tunguska 110 years ago, which took out 80 million trees. Rumours, conjecture and conspiracy theories swirl around the explosion that happened near the Podkamennaya Tunguska River in Siberia, Russia in 1908. And to this day, they still don't know what really happened. The Tunguska event was a large explosion that occurred near the stony Tunguska River in Russia on the morning of 30th of June 1908. The explosion over the sparsely populated eastern Siberian taiga flattened 2,000 square kilometers of forest, yet caused no human casualties, or rather, no known human casualties. The explosion is generally attributed to the airburst of a meteor. It is classified as an impact event, even though no impact crater has been found. The object is thought to have disintegrated at an altitude of 5 to 10 kilometers, rather than to have hit the surface of the Earth. The Tunguska event is the largest impact event on Earth in recorded history. Here is what is known for sure. The explosion occurred about 7:13 a.m. local time on June 30th, 1908. It left no impact crater. The event flattered some 2,000 square kilometer of pine forest. Eyewitnesses reported a fireball followed by trembling ground and hot winds strong enough to knock people down. Seismographs in Western Europe recorded seismic waves from the blast. The blast was visible from some 800 kilometers away. Afterward, Siberia and parts of Europe experienced abnormally bright nighttime skies for some time. The only likely remains of the shattered object that have been found are a few tiny fragments, each measuring less than a millimeter across. Here is what scientists think happened. The explosion was likely caused by the collision of an asteroid or a comet with atoms and molecules of Earth's atmosphere. Objects of a suitable size for this type of explosion collide with Earth every few hundreds of years on average. The explosion likely happened at an altitude of 5 to 10 kilometers, therefore leaving no impact crater. The energy of the explosion is estimated to have been equivalent to the explosive power of as much as 15 megatons of TNT, 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, Japan. And lastly, the radiant energy from the explosion would have ignited trees, but the subsequent blast wave would have extinguished the flames. Thus, the forest was only charred, not burned completely. Here are the questions that remain. 1. What type of body caused the explosion? 2. How big was it? And 3. What was it made of? And then I found this. 100 trees were blown down in Washington Olympic National Park in January 2018. What in the world could possibly blow down more than 100 trees in the middle of a national park where no other major weather event was recorded in the area? A mysterious incident believed to be meteorological in nature knocked down over 100 trees in a Washington State National Park and has left weather experts baffled. The head-scratching event occurred in the early morning hours of January the 27th at the Olympic National Park. Whatever the force was, it wound up knocking down dozens of fairly large trees in the forest, which spawned a rumbling sound that drew concern from people living nearby. Although initially presumed to have been a microburst based on the appearance of the downed trees, a local weather watcher named Cliff Mass dug deeper into the story and realized that it was really more of a riddle than that. It would appear that the force needed to knock down these trees would have to have been considerable, and a radar look at the region during that time indicates no such circumstances which could have conjured the mighty wind. A look at other weather measurements also failed to yield any significant clues, although intriguingly, a seismic recorder in the area did pick up some rumblings, which are thought to have been created by all of the trees hitting the ground. According to Mass, the only weather event which may even be remotely related to the weird tree fall could be a frontal zone due to have hit the area later in the evening, and even he is weary of that explanation. Apparently, this actually has been solved. If you click on the link at the top of the article, you can read the explanation to this. I'm going to leave you to find that out for yourselves. Just click the link and read the article. So some are connecting all of these events to the Ezra prophecy. But what exactly does that mean for us today? What exactly is the Ezra prophecy? Second Esdras is the name of an apocalyptic book in many English versions of the Bible. Its authorship is ascribed to Ezra. Ezra, as a scribe, raises various theological questions that are answered by the angel Uriel. These basically have to do with the end times and the signs that will accompany the age to come. Although Second Esdras was preserved in Latin as an appendix to the Vulgate and passed down as a unified book, it is generally considered to be a tripartite work. Esdras is a Greco-Latin variation of the name of Hebrew Ezra the scribe. In the KJV, Second Ezra, chapter 5, verse 5, it says, "Blood will drip from trees, stones will speak, nations will be in confusion, the movement of the stars will be changed." Another curious connection to the logo changes is the Ezra prophecy in the archaic English spelling. If you look at the many V's, these bear a striking resemblance to the many logos that now have the upside down V as opposed to an A previously. And I keep coming across these particular connections to the V logos. So in this video alone, we have an abundance of the first 2 points. You've already seen examples of bleeding trees. As for the stones will speak part, I did a 2-hour video on speaking stones. Link is below. Which brings me onto the third main Mandela effect of this video and the last part of the Ezra prophecy. The movement of the stars will be changed. Stars and constellations moving to the extent that they change shape. What the F? If constellations change over time, then how come all the astrological constellations still align and represent the corresponding sign accordingly and correctly? And how come the Pyramid of Giza still lines up? This doesn't make sense to me, but the strange thing is it fits the Ezra prophecy. This was actually first brought to my attention a few months ago whilst watching the video on the pyramids for the Speaking Stones video. At the end, she says, quote, "The constellations targeted by the Sphinx's eyes have shifted over time," unquote. It was this sentence in this part of the film that made me realise that the last part of the Ezra prophecies was perhaps being referenced. Here's the thing, if you continue to watch the revelation of the pyramids, you will discover that there are 4 constellations that remain consistent and were believed to have been used as a navigation tool through the pyramids and the Sphinx's head. If constellations change and if stars move position, then how come these 4 constellations remain unchanged? Quote, "The pyramid's 4 angles refer to 4 zodiacal signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, which are, by the way, the fixed signs of the zodiac. In the antique world, Scorpio was represented by an eagle and Aquarius by an angel. 4 stars are assigned to these 4 signs, which used to be called the guardians of heaven or the royal stars. They are the brighter stars of these four zodiac signs: Aldebaran in the Taurus constellation, Regulus in Leo, Antares in Scorpio, and Fomalhaut at the top of Piscis Austrinus, which shares the same longitude with the star Sadal Melik, the predominant star in Aquarius. The constellations of the royal stars were said to be fixed because their positions were close to the four fixed points of the sun's path. So these four stars are the only fixed stars in the universe. Okay. The GIF shows how the Big Dipper, perhaps the most recognizable constellation in the sky, has changed over the past 100,000 years and will continue to change over the next 100,000. The time spans involved resists most of our basic conceptions of civilization or human memory. Even if you take a Neolithic 30,000 BCE mammoth tusk as being our earliest star chart, the Big Dipper still looks a lot like the Big Dipper. But if humans manage to stick around, the Big Dipper will become something more like a small ladle, its main stars shallowing out over thousands of years. And if we make it to 98,000 CE, the Big Dipper starts to look more like a kitchen knife. This is partly because the stars that make up the Big Dipper are relatively close to Earth. Most are only 100 light years away, so their movement is more apparent. Other constellations that are further away will still change greatly over 100,000 years. Orion will see his head slowly sink beneath his shoulders, while his bow inverts itself, but keeps its basic shape to a much greater degree than the Big Dipper. It all goes to show that while we take the stars as unchanging guides, they are constantly shifting. Right now, if you want to make sure you're headed in the right direction, you find Polaris, the end of the ladle of the Big Dipper, is helpful here. But in 3000 BCE, the star Thuban was the North Star. And if humanity hangs around for another 13,000 years, we'll get a new North Star, Vega, the most luminescent star in the constellation Lyra, and currently the second brightest star in the northern celestial night sky. Orion and many of the familiar constellations that have guided ships and populated stories for thousands of years will be completely reshaped in the future, just as they were in the past. The person who discovered that the stars move was the great British astronomer Edmund Halley. Another Mandela effect. Who also has a famous comet named after him. Almost 300 years ago, he noticed that a few stars in charts made by Greek sky watchers were not in quite the same location anymore. Those charts were more than 1600 years old then, and even over that time, the bright stars Sirius, Arcturus, and Aldebaran had shifted position only slightly. Still, it was enough for Halley to realize that those stars must have moved. As a final note, I want to just add one more little article, but big news. It's a little like one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind. Apparently, just recently, the Tree of Life got a new addition, another major branch. Researchers recently found a certain rare and mysterious microbe in a clump of Nova Scotian soil. Their subsequent analysis of its DNA revealed that it was neither animal, plant, fungus, nor any recognized type of protozoan. That it in fact fell far outside any of the known large categories for classifying complex forms of life. Instead, this flagella-waving oddball stands as the first member of its own supra-kingdom group, which probably peeled away from the other big branches of life at least 1 billion years ago. My favorite sentence in the whole article is, quote, Researchers keep uncovering not just new species or classes, but entirely new kingdoms of life, raising questions about how they have stayed hidden for so long and how close we are to finding them all. Don't you just love the Mandela effect? Thank you for watching, take care, and see you on the next video.